You know what's quietly fascinating? Some of the most perceptive, emotionally tuned-in people you'll ever meet are also some of the most mentally drained. Not because they're doing too much in the physical sense, but because their mind rarely powers down. They revisit conversations long after they've ended, replaying tone, wording, pauses. They simulate futures that may never arrive. They find themselves awake at 2 a.m., not because something went wrong, but because their mind keeps asking, what if it does? And here's the paradox at the center of it all. The same mental habit that makes someone insightful, cautious, and deeply empathetic is also the one that slowly exhausts them. So what's really going on here? Psychologists have a name for this odd word pattern: maladaptive rumination. It's the tendency for thoughts to loop again and again, especially around uncertainty, past experiences, or social interactions. But contrary to what people often assume, this doesn't come from weakness or fragility. In fact, research has shown that many people who ruminate do so because their brains are exceptionally good at detecting patterns. Their minds are constantly scanning, analyzing, connecting dots, always searching for meaning, for coherence, for understanding. The issue isn't that the system is flawed, it's that it doesn't know when to switch off. From a neurological perspective, much of this activity centers around the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, reasoning, and self-reflection. In people who tend to overthink, this region stays highly engaged even during moments that are supposed to be restful. At the same time, the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for internal thoughts and self-talk, keeps generating a steady stream of mental dialogue. The result? A mind that feels like it's always running in the background, always reviewing, rehearsing, anticipating. It's like having dozens of tabs open in your head at all times, none of them fully closing. What's even more interesting is where this tendency often begins. For many, it doesn't suddenly appear in adulthood. It develops much earlier, often in childhood or adolescence. Imagine growing up in an environment where emotions were unpredictable, where reactions felt inconsistent, or where mistakes carried heavy consequences. In that kind of setting, the brain learns something very quickly. Stay ahead of everything. Anticipate, analyze, prepare. Because if you can predict what's coming, maybe you can stay safe. Seen this way, overthinking isn't a defect, it's a highly intelligent adaptation. A nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do: protect. But not all overthinking is the same. Psychologists often distinguish between two forms. The first is reflective rumination. This is the kind that turns inward with curiosity, trying to understand emotions, make sense of experiences, and grow from them. When balanced, this can be a real strength. It's closely linked to emotional intelligence and self-awareness. The second is brooding rumination. This is where things become heavier. It's more passive, more repetitive, and often more distressing. Instead of leading to insight, it leads to stagnation, looping through problems without moving toward resolution. And here's the tricky part. Most people don't stay in just one category. They move between both, often without realizing it. A moment of healthy reflection can quietly slip into an exhausting mental spiral. Part of why this happens is because thinking feels productive. Your brain is active, engaged, working. It creates the illusion that you're making progress, but often you're just circling the same ground. There's even a biological reason for this. When you analyze a problem, even hypothetically, your brain releases small amounts of dopamine. It's a reward chemical. So the act of thinking itself, not the solution, gets reinforced. In other words, your brain starts to associate overthinking with a subtle sense of reward. That's why telling someone to just stop thinking about it doesn't really work. The brain isn't just stuck, it's being gently encouraged to continue. So what does all of this say about someone who overthinks? Interestingly, research points to something quite meaningful. Studies have found that individuals who report higher levels of rumination often also score higher in cognitive empathy, the ability to understand and anticipate other people's thoughts and emotions. They tend to pick up on subtle cues. They notice what isn't said. They're highly aware of how their words might land and how others might feel. In short, they feel deeply and perceive sharply. But that level of awareness comes at a cost when it isn't balanced, because noticing everything means carrying more. Considering every possibility means rarely feeling settled. That's the tension, a mind that sees so much but struggles to find stillness within it. And here's an important truth that psychology keeps returning to. Not every problem can be solved through thinking alone. Some things aren't meant to be analyzed into clarity. They're meant to be felt, accepted, decided upon, or simply let go. That's why many therapeutic approaches don't focus on stopping thoughts altogether. Instead, they focus on changing how you relate to them. For example, acceptance and commitment therapy introduces the idea of cognitive diffusion. It's the practice of noticing thoughts without becoming entangled in them. Instead of thinking, "This situation is dangerous and I need to figure it out right now," the shift becomes, "My mind is generating a worry about this situation." It seems small, but it creates space. And in that space, the thought loses some of its grip. Over time, that distance can make all the difference. What all of this really points to is something deeper than just overthinking. It reveals a mind that learned to stay alert for a reason, a mind that adapted to uncertainty by becoming incredibly skilled at anticipating it. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. The real challenge isn't to silence the mind completely. It's to gently teach it that it doesn't always need to be on guard, that not every moment requires analysis, prediction, or preparation, that it's okay to rest. And maybe that's the most human part of all of this. We all carry patterns shaped by experiences we didn't choose, patterns that once helped us navigate the world, even if they no longer serve us in the same way. Understanding those patterns doesn't instantly erase them, but it does something just as important. It changes your relationship to them. And sometimes, that shift in relationship is where real change begins.